I would read my Bible an hour a day, every day. I didn't masturbate for 6 years. Like I didn't look at porn for 7 years. Like I
Congratulations.
I remained a virgin till I was 30, right? And so it's kind of like I was so on this arc of like, yeah, this is the way, and I'm like deeply programmed, still very much myself, but I think there was just a lot of fear for me because I'd go to bed thinking, man, there's still people to be saved, you know? That's me, Billy Otto, being interviewed by the Ideas Digest. And you're listening to The Beginning of Us.
Feel like something is rapidly transfigurating in my core of being, an awakening of sorts.
The Beginning of Us.
A raw conversation hosted by your main frother, Billy Otto.
Pulling apart what it means to rebirth, to rewild, to be curious and to rechild. Yeah, fam, from around the globe. It's Billy here, talking in from Bunjalung Country. Episode 4! I'm usually a little bit more lively when it comes to introing an episode with you, but I think for myself and a lot of people in my community, it's been a bit of a somber and sober 10 days in a lot of ways. I love the Ideas Digest podcast, guys, and they've been so generous to be able to give me this episode where they interviewed me about my faith journey. And one of the reasons why I especially wanted to put this episode up now is because their dear co-host, Cam, tragically passed away in a car incident super recently. I think it was 8 days ago. And I just want to send my love out to his family and to Conrad, the other host of the show. Those boys were such an incredible team. And I never got to meet Cam in real life, but his interview with me, this conversation, really opened up my heart, and his questioning helped me to be brave about certain things I'd experienced within my Christian upbringing. Some of the things I've shared in that episode I've never shared before. Him and Conrad both really created a safe space for me to express myself in a real and raw and authentic way. And so, Cam, I just want to thank you for your legacy. And yeah, man, praise be to God for your love for people and your interest in knowledge and truth and curiosity. And if you haven't heard, fam, of the Ideas Digest podcast, these legends are doing incredible things, just bridging this gap. They are humanizing controversial ideas by learning about where we found them and how they change us, whether they be religious, political, taboo, or politically incorrect. Yeah, Conrad is a dear friend of mine. I've known Conrad since I was about 12 and now I'm 32, so it's 20 years of frothdom. And so love these guys. Won't hold you guys up any longer, but guys, please subscribe to their podcast. And it's a bit of a special one today, this episode, as they're interviewing me. It's very much about faith, fundamentalism, sex, religious orthodoxy, and some of the words are a bit otherworldly in a way. We use a lot of religious language, but I think it's really interesting. And I've had so many letters emailed to me about this episode through the Ideas Digest guys, and I just felt really in my core of being to release it on my own channel. So this is the first time that I'd ever talked about my faith journey in detail in a public sphere. Yeah, it was very real, very raw. I love my heritage and I love Jesus, but everything has flipped in the last 5 years for me, the way that I see God and theology. And so, yeah, if you're interested in that, stay on the train. Heaps of love, guys. Froth on. The Beginning of Us.
I'm right and you're wrong.
Once you start labeling people,
categorizing of humans and ideas,
you have desensitized yourself to the humanity of that other human being.
to who they really are.
and in the marketplace of ideas,
These things are complicated, man.
We all need to engage with a variety of viewpoints.
A genuine multicultural connection with another.
I mean, sometimes you don't need to agree or disagree. You just need to sit with it and digest.
Welcome back to Ideas Digest, the podcast where we've moved beyond agree and disagree into a new land, Cam, called Understanding. Have you been there?
Yeah.
It's a great...
trying to get there.
It's a great place. My name's Conrad, regular co-host with me, Cam.
Yep.
What we do, when we hear an idea we disagree with, we always make assumptions about that person. We assume they're dumb,
conclusions,
evil, irrational, we name call, we run away, but not here.
Yeah.
No, not here. Here, we make assumptions, yes, but then we talk about them, get to know the person behind the ideas, and most of the time we find out that they're humans just like us.
Yeah. And we can learn stuff from them.
And there's often something that we can learn from. So whether we agree or disagree, not the point.
No, doesn't matter.
Do we understand where the other person is coming from? Today, we are joined by friend of the show, musician and audio engineer, Billy. Billy, thanks for joining us.
Dude, I thought you were going to throw in there like male model, influencer.
I'll leave that to you.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a bit of a humbling intro, but I'll roll with it. Nah, it's great. Yeah.
Humbling as in underrated?
You obviously didn't go to Wikipedia or WikiLeaks. But anyway.
No. Have you got a Wikipedia page?
No, I'm not really.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We could set one up for you.
Billy is joining us from Byron Bay, and he's a musician. He makes a lot of music. He's a music producer. What else do you do, Billy, other than male modelling?
I'm an eco warrior, so I'm part of a lot of ecological conservation campaigns up and down the coast, especially to do with ocean conservation, biodiversity, and yeah, I play in different bands. I'm an artist, Billy Otto, little rock band from Sydney, and I tour with different artists. I help to develop artists. And I write music and produce it for a living. Yeah, so I used to be a high school teacher, and I used to be a pastor as well.
Oh, pastor as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I used to be a Seventh-day Adventist minister, and used to be a teacher as well. So yeah.
What level of quals did you get? Did you get to the ordained level or the subcategories below that?
Yeah, well, I've got a Bachelor of Theology, and I was on the pathway to ordination. I was probably a couple of years away. Yeah, but I was like a proper full-time on the books minister. Yeah, so legit.
Yeah, right.
Okay, pretty legit. All right.
Yeah, and some of the best years of my life as well. So I just want to establish that, part of this conversation, like I really want to honour all of my heritage, my family, want to honour, the community that I've come from. It's all beautiful to me as well. So I hope that no one's just getting in here going like ramping up. Oh my goodness, Billy Otto's just going to like rat out on like all these past. But I hopefully have like a bit of a reflection and a gratitude for where I've come from. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from Bunjalung country, in Lennox Head. I want to acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and the culture that has lasted beyond 50,000 years is a culture that is part of my life and part of my heartbeat, and just want to honour the peoples here of the First Nation. So,
Cool.
Well, thanks for that. I think you've given us a lot of things to go on, who Billy is, what he's doing, and what we're going to talk about. The clickbait title we came up with, to be honest, Billy was a bit of a closed book. I had to kind of like go, what can we like just kind of clickbait and trigger people in with? And I was like, all right, in and out of fundamentalism. Maybe that'll get some people riled up. I don't know, but we're probably going to dig deep and unpack maybe some of the core ideas there. But before we do that, I've been listening to Billy, and I've just been thinking of some assumptions.
Yeah.
Like, I've got some labels that I need to...
Yeah, I mean, he lives in Byron Bay right now.
He lives in Byron Bay.
Let's just put
Billy...
that out
He's
there.
probably on mushrooms, probably drives a van.
Whoa, that's our job.
Yeah.
He's making assumptions about himself. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a game. We're going to think up all the assumptions we can based on who you are and what you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
In a simple yes or no nuance, you get to clarify whether that's an accurate assumption or not, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yes or no answers.
I'm getting ready to be placed on your spectrum, you know?
Yeah. We've got all the
We're gonna
boxes
box you hard.
all on the table, and we're dropping Billy into...
You are a mammalian brain, and so I just want you to feel safe, that you can trust me as a tribal citizen.
Yes. I need to place you in a tribe so that I can feel safe. That is what we're about to do. So, Billy, here's what we're going to do. Assumption number one, I've heard a lot of inclusive language. I've heard that you've come from a pastor. It doesn't sound like you're a pastor now. You know what? Are you just some wishy-washy, don't know what you believe kind of guy?
No.
Oh, all right. He's not.
Okay. So, what about, here's another assumption. What about, are you caught up in your feelings? Like you run your life by how you feel.
Well, he's an artist, right? Surely.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No.
Some artist you are.
So yeah, I'm giving you like really black and white statements. I think there's a lot of grey. I think.
Oh yeah. No, you're nailing it. You're doing right. You're doing.
No,
the right
we don't
thing.
want the grey here. That's later.
We'll get to the grey in a minute.
We're just getting everyone.
Even a yes is like a paradox for me. Like there's truth in the grey, but yeah, I won't go there for now. Let's stay black and white.
We're triggering Billy right now.
Yeah.
Good. We want to bring everyone into this discomfort, and then we can move from it.
Yeah.
So, Billy, you're not logical. You must be an illogical kind of guy.
No.
All right, this has been flagged. Like you live in Byron Bay. Like I grew up near Byron Bay, so I know its reputation. You must be some sort of a heavy drug user.
Surely just a shroom every now and then.
No. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, you mustn't fit in down there.
Like I'm open to it, but like I've actually never done hallucinogenics in my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that might lead on to the next assumption.
Yeah.
You're a hippie then.
No.
No.
But he doesn't do drugs.
I'm actually not a hippie.
There was a pause there, though.
Do you want me to expand on any of these questions or not for now?
Nah.
Not yet.
now.
Not yet. We'll give you a chance later on, but not yet.
I'm just waiting for someone to tap out like an old youth leader and to tweet about this and for it to go viral. You know?
Oh, that's what we hope. We hope.
That's the plan.
Any publicity is good publicity in my book.
All right, so we've established that you're not a drug user, you're not a hippie, but you
weird.
have to live in a van, surely.
Surely you live in a van.
I actually don't.
So he's in Byron Bay. He doesn't do drugs. He's not in a van. What the hell are you doing there, mate? Okay, last one, and I'll be honest, this was a fair assumption. I know you a little bit, Billy. We go a bit way back, and I was like, yeah, Billy, he's a bit of an artist guy, you know. He's always late. Like, I bet he's not even going to rock up when we've said, 11 o'clock. I bet he's going to be late. And I'll let you answer this one. Are you always late?
No.
And that's true. He was dead on. So, egg on my face. Yeah. My assumption was proved dead wrong. How silly of me. So, we've taken the time. We've come up with some assumptions about Billy based on who he is, where living,
he lives, all that
kind of stuff. Yeah. There was a lot of no's.
Yeah.
A lot of no's. So,
I
normally...
think they were all no.
Well, I think they were.
They were.
That's true.
0 from 5 or 6.
So if we just went away with our assumptions, we'd have not really
we wouldn't know anything about Billy. Yeah.
So now we throw it back to you, Billy. Here we're going to talk about your journey and to short form it in and out of fundamentalism. Your kind of journey mapping from where you started to where you end. Let's go with so-called spiritually in this realm of how you live and operate in the world back then and now. We'll just throw it over to you. What do you kind of want to clarify in the questions above, and what's your starting point?
Yeah.
Whenever I'm asked about what I am or what I'm not, I actually get quite a bit triggered, and I think it's because I believe that humans are meaning-making machines. We are literally meaning-making factories, and it's I think that evolutionarily. We have come to a point, and part of our evolution has been that we need to classify people from different tribes, and there's certain classification points. And so when someone's like, are you a Christian, are you not? It's kind of I can just see that more often than not, they're trying to figure out if I'm a safe human within their paradigm. And that's the funny thing. There's assumptions about moving to Byron. So you move to Byron and you have a Volkswagen Transporter, and so, you must do mushrooms. You must live out of your van. You're probably polyamorous. You probably space travel on ayahuasca journeys. There's so many assumptions. You probably walk around naked in the rainforest and do rituals. No, I don't.
It'd be more funny if you did, though.
I go to bed at 9 o'clock. Yeah. I wake up at 5:30. I do meditate. I do read. I pray. And I'm still connected to my church community. And I think I've just come back to this sense of I am just conscious awareness. I don't even like to say that I'm a Christian or I'm not a Christian or I'm a mystic or I'm not a mystic. I'm just a curvature of consciousness connecting with you. And I think there is one field of consciousness, and the only thing that's taken us away from connecting together is our ego. And so daily, I want to be intentional about what does ego death look like for me today, and how can I come back to my heart and use logic and operate from my heart and be intuitive, but not lose my connection to nature. Right. And so I think for me growing up, I've grown up in a very conservative Seventh-day Adventist home. My mum is an ex-Muslim, became a very fundamentalist Adventist. My dad grew up in a very conservative Adventist home where he was a missionary's kid. My grandfather, my namesake, was a very famous Adventist evangelist, and he died in the year I was born. And so I come from a deeply religious and dogmatic and creedal heritage. And parts of that is great, but parts of that have caused some programming that I've had to deconstruct and learning to be curious again. I feel like me being programmed to think that Jesus didn't come because of the sins of his people. World War I, World War II could have been stopped if God's people were faithful. And so I think I grew up with a lot of guilt. I think I thought, my body is very sinful and
question or change.
I have a carnal mind that is enmity against God. And
So lead us into that childhood and that upbringing and that worldview that I guess you used to occupy, and then walk us through the things that you started to question or think differently about. So you grew up within a relatively conservative Christian group?
Yeah. So some of you are listening. I can see crew that are calling in that are from outside Christian circles. So I grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist home, which is a breakaway from the Baptist community from back in America. And one of the founders was Ellen White. Our community is very big about Sabbath keeping, so a Saturday sacredness, very similar to the Jewish tradition.
Jewish and Baptism, just Adventism.
Essentially. And I wouldn't say that we are, like Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, but we have a lot of cultural connections to more sectarian things. And the majority of Adventism does see themselves as a remnant, which means sanctified and consecrated in a special way outside the Christian body. And so
if you're an Adventist and you're saying you're the special chosen ones, the remnant, and everyone else is not part of that special chosen, is that the kind of idea of remnant?
Yeah, they're fucked. So it's kind of I grew up thinking that I had to even lie when I was even going to a Pentecostal youth group. I didn't tell my dad because of how much shame there was about, what he literally said to me, why are you even going? You're going back to Babylon. Why are you going? And so there was so much fear, and I'm I'm trying to be part of this remnant, but they've got cooler music and cooler haircuts, and their youth pastors wear skinny jeans.
They're
of
very
course,
cool.
And all the cool girls go there too, and I get to play music there, and so I'd go to a different church, but there was so much shame around that, and if I ever ordered a pizza on a Saturday or ate bacon, I was literally ostracized socially from my family. My dad wouldn't talk to me for weeks, It's kind of, deeply religious trauma from my end.
Rules-based.
Yeah.
And a strict code of adherence that said you're in and you're out, and these are the things you do to be part of the in-group.
Yeah.
But not just in a church community, but actually in your specific family as well.
So was the church community that you were in, was that similar to the kind of legalism you found within your family community?
Yeah, I feel like I was in a more of a stricter family than a lot of other families. I felt like in my family there was a really visible demarcation line in the sand. It's kind of these are the lines, but we would all kind of rebel in our own ways. My brother and I were playing in punk rock bands in high school. You know, I was still
That's definitely not allowed.
I was kind of hooking up with girls, but certain things were okay. Like I could still like make out with girls when I was 14, but as long as they weren't going to make me Pentecostal. It was just But anyway, it's kind of like I feel like in my family, as much as my family was very loving, like I want to like honor my mum and dad. My mum's still one of my best friends, but it's kind of like, but I feel like going to our church, Conrad, that we grew up in, we were in a bit more of a liberal Adventist church, but we played a lot of Hillsong music. We went to Hillsong conference, but we were an anomaly. And that's what I see. Like when I've traveled as a missionary to South Africa or to Africa, to eastern parts of Africa, to South America, all over the States, all over Europe, like I feel like the majority of the population of Adventism believe in real remnancy, like escapism, eschatological narcissism, like literally you are God's, the apple of God's eye, and everyone else, you know, is God's children, but kind of not, you know? There is this separation. Right. There is this very strong creedal duality. And, you know, and that when I actually became very conservative Adventist for a couple of years, I was so primed and so lubricated to think about people as people that I needed to save. And so I had that real missionary heart of how can I win this person over? I'll go for a surf with them, but I'm going to leave them a Steps to Christ pamphlet, you know? Right. I definitely had that mindset. And so I think it was very clear to me that I was existing for another world, for another planet, for another kingdom. And so it wasn't about the now.
And that's what you mean by this escapist. You're saying this escapism of being like, we are God's chosen people. Jesus has died to save us. And our purpose here on earth is to save other people and get to heaven, kind of like get off this planet. First plan is to just get off the planet and go to heaven.
Yeah. And so like, I honestly didn't give a shit about factory farming or about the burning of the Amazon or plastic pollution because, you know, like my home, like there was literally a song that I used to sing with my sisters and my brother and my dad. This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? There's just like this sense of like, we are these pilgrims that are living for another world that isn't here. And Jesus came down here to take us there. But I feel like with that comes this thing of like a lack of presence and a lack of a connection to here and to now because your whole theology is based around a future event, a second coming, a second advent.
Yeah.
And so...
so what I'm hearing is that you're focusing so much on a future something that you can't fully articulate, but you know that there's something there and it's something that you're striving towards, but like you're cocking up the universe down here, like you're destroying the universe that we live on, like this earth that we live on right now. And you just saw a bit of a disconnect between that and didn't sort of sit real comfortably with you.
Yeah, man, that's the thing. Like I think disconnect, Cam, is a beautiful way to put it. Because I think now when I reflect on that journey, I think what was missing was oneness and a sense of essence and a connection of all things. And I think, honestly, when I read Eckhart Tolle and some of these more mystic authors that reflect on the Gospels, I think that Jesus was actually, he's been interpreted in different ways, Jesus has, but I think a big thing that was missing from Jesus' emphasis was, Father, that they may be one as we are one. And this connection to each other and this connection to the planet that I feel was missing from my theology completely. And so...
Do you think the escapist theology, so to speak, the one that says heaven is our true home, this earth isn't, do you think that was directly responsible for your lack of care about the planet and the environment and social issues like that? Would you make that connection?
Because I think that's the thing, like even when it comes to, it's not just ecology, it's not just eco-custodianship, it's also philanthropy because some people call me a greenie now. I try to live waste-free. Like I'm part of these big campaigns against fossil fuel companies now. But I've also been really involved in mental health work, especially with young men. And that's a big part of my messaging when I tour with some of my guys. But I feel like both of those things were missing from my Christian experience when I was younger, just because why would I even really care about my friend who's going through depression? Like, I'd care about him, but my emphasis is that he would be saved. Like, I'm not going to get him to, I'm not going to go with him to AA meetings or to take him through depression recovery. Like, I want to take him through Bible studies. And I think I did care about him being mentally healed as well. But I'm like, if he can get saved and God can heal his body and his mind as well, like, I think it, you know, but my emphasis.
That was more important to you.
Yeah.
That and there was like, that you get to heaven as opposed to like fixing the problems that, like alcohol, for example, if he's like struggling with alcohol addiction, you're like, don't worry about that. Have a look at this Jesus guy sort of thing and let's get you to heaven sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like, man, like when Titanic's sinking, you're not going to be sitting around talking about your emotions. You're like, fuck, get me on a lifeboat. Like, get me out of here. And that's when Jesus, in a conservative mind, like he could come in any month. Like in Adventist theology, probation hasn't closed yet. The Noah's door is still open. I was so deep dived on this thing, right? And so
go deep dive. Let's do it.
We because within the judgment, within Adventism, it's like we have this short period of time right now to repent. And Jesus is doing his work in the heavenly sanctuary up above. It sounds so esoteric and so cosmic. And as we pray, he's giving our prayers to the Father. There's this like illustration that we have, but there is a time coming when Jesus is going to leave the most holy place and he's going to come to earth. And when he steps out, if you haven't made a decision, you're lost forever. All right?
Game over.
Right.
And so if you really love your neighbor, if you really love your friend, your neighbor as yourself, as Jesus says, the golden rule, you will do anything that they would at least know or hear of the gospel, that they would hear of the good news of the Father. More than anything. And so...
just in case there's some listeners there, like what does you're out mean? Like what was your understanding of, like Jesus steps out of that place of judgment, so to speak.
And what do you do to get in?
Yeah, what did it look like? What's the alternative?
The alternative is to hear the everlasting gospel. And so in the book of Revelation 14, 6 through to 12, I think it is, Revelation has a message called the Three Angels' Message, and that is the consolidating of the messaging of Scripture, which is to fear God and to give glory to Him and to receive the gospel. But it's the true gospel, because I think Adventists believe that, you know, other Christians might be talking about the gospel, but it's a tainted gospel. It's a fractured gospel.
Right.
It's not the right one.
It's not the right one. So it's like, sorry, buddy, if you're a Baptist, if you're a Lutheran, if you're a CCC or an AOG.
You're so damn close, but it doesn't cut the mustard.
Just missed it by that much.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I lost so many friends, man. Like I cannot, it's even a bit paralyzing to think about. And I know that I was doing the best that I could. And I don't want people to leave this conversation with me going like, oh, he's just trashing it. It's just like, I'm trying to pull it apart. And I think I've been able to redeem the gems of that as well. Like there's so many things, and I want to unpack that later, things that I take away.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Do you think that sense of urgency and that sense of I need to help and save as many people to get off this sinking Titanic as quickly as possible, is that what supposedly led you, like, did you dive deeper then into this like more fundamentalist worldview that was very much more like, if you are not an Adventist, you are not saved?
Yeah, essentially. I think there was always that caveat to come back to of like, yeah, but God knows your heart. And so, because I'm like, there's more than like 7 billion people in the world. Like, wait a minute, like how can this gospel, what if people die? And it's like, oh, yeah, but Jesus knows their hearts and He knows the light that they've been given and they've been faithful to that light. So there was a bit of a conflict there as well, but I definitely believed that I was in Noah's Ark. I definitely believed that.
Right.
I would step into a conservative Adventist church with my suit on and that gross 80s carpet.
Fat tie? No skinny jeans?
No skinny jeans. I'd just walk in and I would feel this sense of comfort, security, and almost like a fabricated ground of being. Like I felt really grounded, and because I felt safe.
Wow.
Because I absolutely knew what was the truth and what wasn't. I absolutely know. And that's the sin of certainty. That's the Pete Enns stuff right there of like,
Right.
Because I so clearly knew about the cosmos, about eschatology, about heaven and hell, about theology, hermeneutics, six-day creation. I fully knew the whole timeline, the linear timeline of history. Like, I was safe because I knew the truth. And so I would read my Bible an hour a day, every day. I didn't masturbate for 6 years. Like, I didn't look at porn for 7 years. Like,
Congratulations.
I remained a virgin till I was 30, right? And so it's kind of like I was so on this arc of like, yeah, this is the way, and I'm like deeply programmed, still very much myself, but I think there was just a lot of fear for me because I couldn't, I'd go to bed thinking, man, there's still people to be saved, you know?
Right.
So that's an interesting like dichotomy you pull out there. That's saying you experience this overwhelming sense of safety and security, and it seems to be coming from like there's a lot of unknowns in the world. How do we get here? What is consciousness? What are we doing? What happens after you die? Are there things such as spirits? And there's these immeasurable things. Does science have all the answers? Even science says no, but we're trying to find them out.
Yeah.
And did your theology then cover all of that uncertainty? So any question about what happens when you die, the cosmos, is there a God, was your theology a direct answer to any unknown?
Yes. Yeah.
And that made you feel very safe.
That was your
Yeah, man.
But it sounds like it also gave you the other side of the coin, sounded like a lot of fear, and perhaps
Because if you stepped outside of those boundaries or that box, then you were exposed to, you know, being left out of the kingdom, so to speak.
if what comes with that certainty is that necessity to then go, well, other people need this exact same certainty because in that belief system, if you're not in, you're out. But then it seemed to give you a heightened sense of fear that then, did that drive you even further into the legalism and fundamentalism?
Yeah, man, like my fundamentalism, legalism patch only lasted really for like 3 years, and then I became like cool Adventist again. And so,
well, tell us about that. Cool Adventist, I like those guys. I think I was one of those.
For a whole year, like I was knocking on doors, giving pamphlets to people, trying to get Bible studies, living in Melbourne as a Bible worker, living in America, studying at David Asscherick's school in Detroit at the time. And I was like fully on this train, but I think I began to see more and more that, yeah, there was a bit of a disconnect. Like there was an unrest that I had. It was almost like it was too hard because I did have perfection in my mind. Like I kind of was so far to a point of like the grace of God and the message that I believed meant that I could nearly be kind of perfect in a way, and that I wasn't going to be able to sin. And I think that kind of gave me a lot of anxiety. And then I kind of went back to like more liberal theology that was more grace-based, and I think that was something that gave me what felt like a bit of liberty at the time. But in that faith camp also has its own problems and has its own fear and still believes in kind of a heaven-hell kind of spectrum. And yeah, and so I kind of dropped like the suit and tie thing, kind of dropped the conservative speaking gigs.
Picked up the skinny jeans.
Yeah, I went to Avondale College. They made me heaps liberal, you know. And and no, but basically, I think I just made more of an emphasis on like Jesus and giving your life to Jesus and the changed life. So I came back to more of a simple gospel, and a lot of the end time stuff kind of became a bit wishy-washy. And
so what's interesting to me is your transition through these stages, and I'm wondering if there's like a gateway drug idea or question that you were asking that I feel like I've mapped it to being like this certainty that you had that gave you safety also gave you fear that drove you further into the rules and the fundamentalism that gave you more answers but then more fear. What then led you out of that into, I guess, the more cool skinny jeans Adventism that was a bit more open? What kind of deconstructed you from that?
In 2015, I actually toured the world by myself, and so I'd already been like a full-time Adventist teacher and chaplain, and I think from being a chaplain for a couple of years, I began to see that there was some toxic mental paradigms and certain energies. I was just like, something doesn't make sense. Like, why are people so fearful of each other, and why is there such a judgmental outlook and perception of my fellow man, like in a staff room.
Right.
Like, where does this come from? But I traveled the world. I went to like 30 countries playing music in Brazil and in Spain, in Germany. Like, I played so many shows. It was the best year of my life. And
so just pause quick for a second. Were you saying that like there's this distrust of fellow man within your Christian workplace? Is that something that started to make you go, oh, like, what's up?
Like, in that world, man, like, and like, I was in a school, for example, where, yeah, there's Adventists that work as staff and then there's non-Adventists. And so already the Adventists are kind of concerned about the non-Adventists. But within the Adventist circle, there's certain circles, right? There's inner circles, outer circles. Within the Adventist circle, there's also non-Trinitarians. And so the anti-Trinitarians.
And are they the super fundamentalist
Very
ones?
fundamentalist, very to the sacred text of Ellen White in the Bible, like extremely. But
We're going to get one of them. If you know any, send them our way.
I was kind of dancing in that world a little bit because of my brother and certain worlds that I was in. And so I lived in so much fucking panic because I was getting dubbed a non-Trinitarian when I was working in an Adventist school. And I got threatened that I was going to lose my job. But I'm like, I didn't do anything. And so I lived in fear for like 2.5, 3 years, being scared that people were going to know that I was Adventist and that I was going to be classified as an outcast because I'd come from the cool surfing, the cool speaking circuit. And now I was like, I don't know if the Trinity's in the Bible, but then, oh my goodness, like I can't lose my community. And I would get these phone calls from a conference president being like, what do you believe? And dude, it was like, I felt like I was in a bit of a concentration camp.
Right.
Wow. So you're in this like highly fear-based, like now it's making sense because at the top of the show you were saying it really triggers you when people start like leveling accusations at you and it's a yes, no, we really put you in the war zone type flashbacks right there.
Yeah.
Because from
PTSD warning.
from your experience, you're in this world where you were Adventist, then too fundamentalist for the mainline Adventists.
Yeah.
And you've always, the thing that has determined whether you are in or out, accepted or not, saved or not, has been what you quote unquote believe. And if you believe if your doctrine is too fundamentalist,
right things, it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
If it's too skinny jeans, you're going to lose your job as well.
Yeah.
So I can see a sense of like anxiety around like this idea of what you intellectually think is the picture of the universe, your beliefs.
Yes. Yeah, man, like 100%. It's kind of like there's so much classification back and forth. And basically for me, I was constantly in this conundrum of like, I'm not liberal enough, I'm not conservative enough, and now even in the non-Trinitarian world, I'm not non-Trinitarian enough, and I didn't get the same accolades that my brother got because he was more in it. And there was all these things, it was so tribal. At the same time, I'm kind of haunted from like 2 years before that when I was like thinking about leaving Adventism, my mum told me that my dad wanted me to change my last name. Like, that's how in it my family is because of how much curse that would bring on the family. Or, like, just how much shame, more so shame than a curse.
Because of the non-Trinitarian type stuff?
Oh, it was a bit of that. And it was also, but even before that with Pentecostalism. And so, yeah.
Oh.
And so my intuition at this point was like, I would feel like, oh, the end times is the full thing. And then I'm like, my intuition would say, oh, but now it's like the more liberal thing is. But then my intuition would go, oh, now I think it could be non-Trinitarian. Like, I didn't know how to find my compass. And it was almost like this collective moral intuition of like, maybe I'm being a coward about theology that isn't popular. And so there was even more fear with that. And so I was just like...
So as you're moving through ideas and you're exploring what you understand of your theology and those sorts of things, you're not... Like, you're moving around in your ideas and you're finding that there's not space for that movement within that structure or that organisation of religion. Would that be an accurate description of your experience?
Yeah, for sure, man. Like, because I think my colonial, capitalist, Western mind, the way that I've been wired is like, I'm either right or I'm not. I'm either in or I'm out.
Right.
And that polarisation... Like, I didn't want to be on the losing team and I didn't want to lose my salvation.
Right. Yeah.
And so
it sounds like there's this interesting interplay as well between the beliefs and the ideas that you had about what was right, what was wrong, what was in, what was out. This interplay between you personally and your immediate community. It sounds almost like you would put something out there and then the compass would be like the social circles being like, oh, well, they said that's wrong and this is too far that way. It's this interesting, like, did your social circles at all really play into this back and forth with what's right and what's wrong?
100%. I remember talking to my brother-in-law, Matt Potts, and I was just kind of like, man, like, why did you tell me this stuff? I was with my brother and him, and they were telling me this end-time conspiracy stuff, and I was like, I knew what I had to give up now, my whole rock and roll future, but it was so clear. It was like Muhammad receiving that vision from Allah. It was like, it just came to me and I'm just like, this is the truth. This is the truth. And I knew it. And that's the thing with moral intuition, man. Like, that's why I've had to like reprogram and deconstruct, because so many times in my life, I knew without a doubt that this was the truth. Even though it wasn't really mingled with science and it wasn't mingled with, wider informed minds.
Because that goes to my question, like, what gave you all of that, like that clear certainty in those ideas? Like, because you say that it wasn't science, it wasn't other thinkers or other things, like you just knew within. Can you explain? Like, can you explore that a little bit?
Well, I think humans have simple minds, and simple minds look for simple answers. You want to find simple scapegoats, simple narratives, simple people to demonize, simple gods. And so I think for me...
brain shortcuts,
Yeah, it's kind of like, if I can find out... It's the same with the environmental world. Like, you can go, like, let's all hate Scott Morrison right now. And so, oh, look, he signed off all these exploration rights to, like, different fossil fuel companies. Let's hate on him now. And it's just kind of like, we want to find a scapegoat. And I feel like, for me, that kind of thinking of, like, if I can find what the true thing is, like those three different creeds that separate me from everyone else, and if I can find the right scapegoat and a simple narrative, I think because there's security if you can clearly cohesively know the right tribe. There's so much security, and so I think it's like, man, I was not in a place where I could deal with the unknown and just with simple childlike curiosity. I think it's probably just from where I grew up, potentially in my environment. I wasn't taught to read science books. I wasn't taught to read history books. It was like, read the Bible, read Ellen White, go to church on a Saturday. We program you, get on that freaking conveyor belt and believe or get out. It was that simple. Where I've come to now is that I think tribalism leads to polarization and leads to demonization. And I think all those things are connected. I think you can get so safe within your tribe. Conrad, we've talked about tribalism a lot, and it's so powerful. If you can find the right gods and the right enemies, and when I was surrounded by people like my brother and different people, like, I felt so safe, and that empowered me so much in my belief system and increased the volume of my conscience, like, beyond the Richter scale.
Did you find that healthy, that safety?
And in what context are you using the word conscience?
Oh, I think it's kind of like, and that's the thing, conscience, or like, let's call it intuition. Because I think when I think about like the end times or the non-Trinitarian message within theology or whatever, I would just feel like it was a conscience issue that although I'm going to lose friends, I'm going to lose church people, I'm going to lose speaking opportunities, it's actually God spoke to me on this. And so I've got to take on this path and follow that conscience, even though there is a lot of shame involved from my world.
Yeah.
So but then when you're amped by people around you, I think it gives you that clarity of like, no, but it's worth it. And you've got like your crew cheering you on, and it's kind of like, I'm ready to go fight. I'm ready to go fight in the Crusades against Saladin. I've got the people around me. I've got the brothers. The Pope has blessed me. It was that kind of thing. And I think throughout history, it's always been there.
Treats it more like warfare than connection with people. So you were saying that it was in like this staff room working in a Christian school that you noticed this division constantly between people. Your position and belonging to the tribe was always in question. And that was something that started to have something inside of you. And then you're about to talk about you traveling the world and what began to shift.
Yeah. I'd studied teaching. I'd studied theology. I was a little bit at this point kind of, I love studying theology. And when you study theology, you study Greek and Hebrew, you study history, you study a little bit of psychology. Loved it all. And I think it actually planted a seed when I was at university that like the scholastic world is actually awesome. Like when I was outside university, we'd use terms like don't go to theology school because they teach you high criticism there. And like you're going to go beyond the Bible. And you're going to read from theologians that are not Adventist. You're even going to read from people that believe in evolution. It's like, oh my goodness.
Not a good one, that one.
The gateway drug, there was a gateway drug. There was different ways to read the book of Revelation. I was like, drop the front door, it's just kind of like, it was just like, no way, you cannot question. But then little by little, it started whispering in my ears, these things of like, there's different interpretations of these chapters of Revelation. Is it literal or is it spiritual? Are those numbers literal or is it spiritual? And so,
what made that input stick? Like some people would be listening and saying, old you would have been like, other people read Revelation that way, but it's wrong.
It's wrong.
Like
it's
what
not the
stuck,
right way.
what got in there and like penetrated your mind in the sense that you went, oh, but what if? Like what was the turning point?
Oh man,
of that?
there was so much cognitive dissonance for like the first 2 years. I was just kind of delete, and I would just move on. I'd just be like, nah. And I'm like, I'm just here to get my ticket so I can pass to God's church. That was it. Like I was just like, who is this guy? He's got a pot belly, like too much wheat bix. Like, what does he know with his 3 PhDs? There's so much ego, like so much pride. And I'd fully classified him as like not part of my tribe, even though he's part of my denomination. And so...
Interesting.
Yeah, man. So like, it was like, but little by little I began to see like, these readings are amazing. I had to read so much in those couple of years of my life, and you didn't want to speak too much and just be annoying about your conservative stuff because you still wanted to kind of get a job at the end of the day too. So I think a part of me was kind of like, I don't want to be like ridiculous. I had so many weird views going in there. Like I didn't believe that women should be ministers. I didn't believe, certain things about Jesus in his humanity. There were certain theologies that were quirky about me already. But yeah, man. But I think reading so much, I began to fall in love with reading scholastic articles. Like I love history, theology, psychology, sociology, anthropology. Like I'm so into it. Like, and that's one of the reasons why I love reading Sapiens, because it's like everything that I was kind of hinting at college. Sapiens is all of that. It's all of those disciplines.
Sapiens, the book by Yuval Harari.
Yeah, great read. The thing is like, even if I was to read that, to say that to the world, again, another classification that I'm not in someone's tribe, another ticket gone. But at the same time, even Yuval, I don't have to believe everything that's in there. I think most of it's great. But the thing is, even Yuval would say that what's made Sapiens such an incredible race, and why we've come to the tipping point of like the dominance patriarchy or hierarchy, is because of our ability to tell stories. That is why the Homo erectus and the Neanderthals didn't make it, is because they didn't have the same communicative power with narrative to be able to, and that's the power of religion. Like religion is like the most powerful force, and Yuval's not actually against religion, but he'd also say that capitalism is a religion. Our understanding of economics is religious, right? When we step into when someone goes to watch Liverpool or Chelsea, like that is a church service in its own way with its own priests and priestesses, And so, but it's like our power of narrative has made us what we are. And so you can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
What I'm hearing you talk about now is definitely the lens with which you're talking about how you used to believe as well. You're looking at it like, these are stories that I was told, these are stories that I believed, and this led me to see the world and engage with the world and engage with people in a particular way. So it sounds like you are a very long stone's throw, a catapult away from that perspective now. And you're looking back on it with like this very
hindsight.
More like I'm definitely hearing like an evolutionist. What's the word? Non-anthropocentric.
Yeah.
Like
totally,
humans aren't at the center. I can hear you kind of bringing in some of these ideas, but we're probably going to end up there. So you were traveling the world then, and that began to do what?
Yeah, like I suddenly felt like I could spread my wings. Like I was like, I'll stay in the Adventist world, it's comfortable, but I was so open. I broke up with my girlfriend, who was a very conservative Adventist Korean girl at the time, and that's when I was on tour in Brazil, and my music started getting a lot of traction in South America, in parts of Europe, and in the States. That whole year, I was just going around the world, just doing laps, lots of carbon emissions. But I ended up in Brazil. My first tour in Brazil, I actually started watching. I was just really curious. I had so much time. All I would do was play shows, work my social media, and then I would literally, play shows again, sleep, eat, whatever. But it was bizarre because I was in this place where I had so much time and I had Wi-Fi, and so I started watching like a lot of Richard Dawkins, and so I was just kind of like,
to disprove him or be like, oh, this guy's wrong, I want to find out, or
I was just flirting with it. I was just kind of like, you know what, I've got nothing to lose. Like, what is this? And I started looking at debates and stuff, and it just kind of started like, I'm like, wow, like how can I go into these conversations with non-judgment? How can I just take my judgmental, eschatological, Adventist programming, those glasses off just for a second and just kind of just tease it, But then I'd get to a point, but then I'd go back and sing at these big, massive Adventist youth concerts. So there was, again, this cognitive dissonance of like, this world loves me. I'm kind of becoming like semi-famous in that world now. I'm selling thousands of albums, and I'm a poster boy. I'm getting put on these big like banners around the country. It was just really weird, and I was on TV, and so there was a cost. If I was to kind of go this path, then I'm going to lose this whole world.
You'd lose that.
And so again, I got offered a pastoring job in America, and I took it, and then it kept me back in that world again. It was kind of this back and forth, and I went into the most conservative Adventist church. It was so weird that I ended up there after all of my travels.
So old Billy would have been like at home in this church that you ended up in, but you weren't mentally in the same space anymore.
Yeah.
And so part of me was like, loving it because people were so lovely, and I was kind of like seen as a little demigod, rock star, Adventist conservative youth preacher. Like people loved me in that church, I think.
You were the Carl Lentz of Adventism.
Yeah, and I was still getting flown around the country for different things, but still part of me was like 3 weeks in was like, I can't do this long term. Like I have to do music, and there's something that's really weird. And when I was actually working as an Adventist pastor, I began to see just the trappings and the vestiges of archaic theology and what it does to people, to be honest.
So is that it was like your personal experience with people that brought that out, do you reckon? Or?
Just how judgmental things were, and like I love my crew there, but it was just like how much my young people were suffering from how their parents would speak to them and from what elders would say to them. I was just kind of like, why am I part of this world? I'm trying to make it cool. I'm trying to make it more relaxed and more open-minded, but like it's going to take years. It's going to take generations to steer this ship into a more calm, conscious shore.
It's interesting that you keep coming back to this idea of like judgmentalism. There seems to be a theme that both triggered you at the top of being like, this is a very judgmental space, and then hearing your experience, it's a common theme that's coming across.
Yeah, it's driven both you dive into fundamentalism, but then also out of it.
Yeah, like it sounds like you felt so judged always, even when you were trying to be the most correct human, that is what you first started to go, well, this has hurt me so badly, and I can now see it within myself. And like you said before, as you were watching Dawkins, you were like, well, I don't want to be what's hurt me so much, which is judgmental.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to deconstruct that judgmentalism within you that brought you to kind of listen to Dawkins as judgmental-less as you can.
Completely.
Does that sound like a common theme I'm pulling out there?
Yeah, fully, man. Because, I felt like a massive part that had to die as part of my ego was classification, putting things on the spectrum of like, is it true or is it not? And just being like, how can I be a child again? I started reading a lot of Stoic philosophy that year, and it was actually diving into like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca that I began to see that there's so much beauty and so much knowledge and insight and awareness that's from outside my tribe. And I'm like, wait a minute. This was written at the same time of Paul. Some of it was written at the same time of Jesus. And I'm like, man, these guys were saying really similar things, and it's beautiful and it's as empowering, maybe more practical for my life as a man. Like, this is amazing. But I felt kind of sinful. I was kind of like, why do I enjoy reading Stoicism so much and not reading the book of Romans as much? So part of me was kind of conflicted with these back and forths of like, there has to be something bigger to this. And I began to see that consciousness goes beyond one tribe, that there is like a universe of consciousness and conscious awareness.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that you pick up, as you started exploring different ideas and different thinkers and different writings and things like that, you found really similar ideas to what you found, like say in the Bible, for example. And some of those ideas were even more practical to your life than what you could find in the Bible. And so you're like, well, hold on, there's like truth outside in this, like in say the Quran, for example, there's truth there. Why is the Bible so exclusive to this truth? Would that be fairly accurate?
Yeah, completely, man.
As a result, that opened you up.
Yeah.
That opened you up to sort of trusting more, would you say, in other thought ideas?
I began to kind of observe my journey, my own thoughts, and observing my own journey, and just feeling like, man, it feels like I've been in the dark ages where the Catholic Church was just burning books, Nazi Germany burning books, it's just kind of like this thing. If we can't be curious, if we like, a real freedom is an intuitive freedom. And it's like Jesus even said that if you want to see the kingdom of heaven, you have to become like a child. Like, he doesn't say become like a scholar or become like, it's like really you have, and a child can trust. A child is playful, is having fun. A child walks outside, doesn't care what he's wearing. He's just kind of like, wow, butterflies. And I think for me then was just this whole pool of freedom and glory, because I was just kind of like, wow, like I don't have to be scared. But I guess I was inhibited because I was an Adventist pastor, so I didn't want to talk about this. And I was still getting paid by a congregation and by a denomination to give a certain message. And so I was really conflicted. And so it was my partner, Chrissy, that was just like, Billy, you've just got to be honest with yourself. Like, you can't be paid by the system if your heart's not in it, and if you can't with good conscience adhere to that creed like you used to. And and so I didn't want to come across like someone that I wasn't. And I think that's some of the rock and roll inside of me of like, I want to be me.
Like, you're in this new place, like it's sort of, how did old Billy, the fundamentalist, view the current Billy as you are now? How would he have seen you? And then also talk about yourself now, looking back at fundamentalism.
Yeah, so I think if I was, Billy, 5-6 years ago, let's go back to when I was an Adventist chaplain, for example. Which phase of my life? Really conservative? You want to go like from my really conservative days, how I'd view myself now?
Yeah, why not?
You can give different pinpoints of timelines.
Yeah, you can flag it,
Conservative Billy, liberal, cool Christian Billy, and now like progressive evolutionist woo Billy.
Even this conversation is a bit of a joke, because I bet you there's so many people that would just be like, heck, like Billy's such a joke because he's tried so many different pathways. Like, where is he now? Like, I don't even care. For me, I'm kind of like this wandering...
Well, you're putting it all to rest for everybody.
I'm just this wandering, pronking gazelle that's just finding his way, you know? Like... And
leaping through the universe.
I do love that about myself, that like I've been brave enough to take things on, and if I'm going to commit to something, I'll go all in, you know. And so I don't judge myself and hate myself over like, why did I go down this bloody path?
Cool.
You know, it's like for me, it's a beautiful part of my trying to figure out myself, you know. And so, but yeah, going back to when I was like, okay, let's go back 12 years ago, very conservative, most conservative season of my life. I would see myself now. I would see the current Billy as very lost, a beautiful person that I'd like to hang out with and like to surf with, might even secretly listen to his music but not talk about it because his music isn't Christian.
Well, it's good you're making music that you like.
Yeah. You know, I'd appreciate that he was vegan, vegetarian. I'd appreciate that he takes care of God's creation. But I think I would see him as lost in the New Age. I remember reading a book when I was younger called Deceived by the New Age. And I think anything connected, I was so warned by ministers that don't go near meditation or, you know, certain practices that are about what they would call emptying your mind, which I don't believe that's what meditation is. But yeah, or opening yourself to any like teachings from the Tao or Zen masters or you know, anything from
traditions.
Yeah, or participating in yoga. Like I thought that was satanic back in the day. And so I also love
you're in
listening.
Byron, so I assume you're regularly doing yoga.
Yeah, like I at least do like I honestly did like a good solid downward facing dog before this chat just to get the blood rush through my brain.
Stop bragging.
But, you know, like I definitely would see, man, he's lost. He's part of the occult. He listens to occult bands like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd, and so he's lost. But I love him as a brother. But yeah, I'd invite the current Billy towards to like a hang with my other cool Adventist surfing friends, you know. But I would definitely see myself as lost, completely lost.
Yeah.
But still soft enough, because I think that I'm a soft human. I'd say that I'm a kind human, and I think that I would see myself as like he still could hear the gospel. His heart isn't hard towards the truth, but he's a bit of a work in progress. And
he's not completely lost. He's
you're fertile ground for the seed to fall on.
Exactly. Somewhat like a low-hanging fruit, but like deeply deceived. But I think before going into my house, going into current Billy's house, I would definitely like want to pray and have people pray over me because I would probably think that Billy's house...
I can see some records behind you.
Yeah. I would definitely want to cleanse, I'd want to pray because I think that maybe Billy's house might have some evil spirits.
Okay.
Right.
Just because I make rock music and just because I do yoga. So...
Yeah, you don't only listen to it, mate. You make it.
You make it.
I would also assume that the current Billy like sleeps with a lot of women. I'd assume that. Even though I've only ever slept with one person my whole life. I'd also assume that Billy like would drink a lot and would just have really loose friends. They were just things that I'd assume as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about flipping that? How does Billy now see Billy back then?
Yeah.
And so Billy now, I just see Billy back when I was 19 as very cute. And I would just be like, man, what a beautiful little boy. Like he's so
You just ruffle his hair?
I'd ruffle his hair, like I'd tackle him. I would just try to tell him to say like a bad word, I'd mess with him.
Oh, you'd mess with him. Oh, real nice of you, Billy.
Yeah, soft human you are.
I would know something about conservative Billy's rock and roll past from when he was 14 and 15, so I'd just be like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
Loosen
you
up
enjoyed that
bit.
show we played at that Pentecostal church. You loved it, mate. You were rocking out on the bass. Conrad was in the crowd being like, oh, Billy's so cool.
Honestly, I would honestly see little Billy as like on a journey. Like, and I'd try to come in with non-judgment, and I wouldn't want to see myself as a spiritual elite because I think that's a deception that I've also had as well. Is like you go from one fundamentalism to another and you're like, oh, now I meditate for an hour a day. And so like I'm levitating, like where are you with your consciousness? It's like, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And so
the same fundamentalism can go from a conservative Adventist structure into this so-called New Age, more spiritualism, where the mechanism behaves the same.
Yeah.
If you
totally.
meditate, you just replace Bible reading and Ellen White with meditating and being
yoga.
super vegan, and you're
so
still a
many
fundamentalist.
broken humans that are like yogis and like meditation teachers. It's like so many. It's like
Interesting.
they can all be masks, and that's the thing. It's not about choosing one tribe over another. I would see young Billy as on a journey, and like his little Billy is like beautifully reading his Bible. He's not going out and fucking heaps of chicks all the time. Like he's with his sacred text. He loves his family. Like he's a beautiful boy, you know? I just be like, I love his heart, you know? And, you know, when he tries to win me over and he's trying to baptize me, I just love him, you know? It's great. It's not my journey.
You just ruffle his hair and tackle him. Billy, I've been there, mate. You know this.
Generally known as Chris is saying, do you levitate? No, I don't. I don't levitate.
He'll get there though. An hour a day makes the levitation away.
In all of this, guys, like I actually love the person of Jesus, and I want to become more like Jesus, and I believe in the Christ consciousness, and I love the New Testament, and I think that you know, coming to the Bible with fresh eyes and not trying to read my theologies into it, I'm just kind of like, I'm present with the text, and I can just be like, man, the book of John is still one of my favorite books ever. And John 17 is all about us knowing the true heart of the divine. It's so good, and I could quote so much of it. And, you know, for me to like negate my history and negate my knowledge of that sacred text and of those sacred practices and that faith tradition, like, would be so silly. Because I definitely believe that, you know, God has like spoken to me through the Bible. Yeah. And so like I'm pro going to church, I'm pro the Bible, but I also do yoga, and I'm, you know, also very much into my spiritual practice now. But it's like, how can I maintain tradition and ritual, but also maintain curiosity and growth? Because at the end of the day, like, I don't care if someone's a yogi or if they're a Mormon. Like, are you kind? Are you fucking kind? Like, do you care about suffering? You know, like, these are the bigger questions. My mom is like the most conservative, flat earth, end times Adventist you could ever meet, non-Trinitarian. But she's like reached like a Zen state, because she's like the most kind human that loves her former Muslim family that betrayed her to prison, you know, because of her leaving faith. You know, it's like my mom has reached this nirvana of like care and compassion, and like I want to be like her. Like, so there's not one way. I don't think there's one path. I don't see things as linear. I don't see hierarchy and patriarchy. I see this, and it's beautiful. I'm part of this ecosystem. The universe is me. I'm part of the universe. I'm part of nature. The nature is me, and it's beautiful. It all connects, and it's all one. So
I'm sensing and hearing a lot of like this emphasis on non-judgment, inclusion, openness, but also like this sense of accepting the history you have, the Christian language that you come from. It's instrumental within you, and it doesn't sound like you've become this Dawkins grade atheist against it, being like, this is useless. Because would you say that your previous belief system was entirely useless? Like, is there anything within it that you've stuck with and you found very beneficial within that, even the most hardest times that you had as more fundamentalist?
Within these incredible partisan systems, I think there's so much to take away. And for me, like, I always knew that I was special because God loved me growing up. And that was like a huge part of me to feel like, even though I grew up in Newcastle and everyone's like, fuck man, got to drive a Hilux, got to play footy, and that's how you become a man. I always knew that I could transcend that within myself because God loved me as a son. And there were certain pictures that I had about the universe that were like, I'm not alone. You know, there is this divine essence that is so connecting me and pursuing me, and that's what I believed. And I think there's beauty in that. I would still want to think that I treat people like they are a son or daughter of the divine. And I do see that divine essence in people, and I think that's what I found that from the Christian tradition, but you can find that from other traditions as well. But that's definitely a gem of beauty and kindness that I've taken away.
You're saying like that religion you grew up with was an alternative to the quote-unquote religion of society, which might be money, which might be fame, which might be the Commodore Ute, which might be doing burnouts in Newcastle. Like there's a culture and a picture of the universe that the society has as a whole, and you're saying that there's this benefit of when you say and adhere to like, oh, but there's also another way. It sounds like you're saying that gave you a sense of freedom from that religious dogma, the secular religious dogma, so to speak, and it gave you another option to the point now where you go, oh, okay, now it's not this religious dogma or that one. There's also other realities that you can build a picture of, if that makes sense.
It's like we're both from Newcastle, bro. We go back there and it's such a religious city in its own way. Like there's a way, you know, I should have gotten a trade in some ways. I should have become a builder. I should have got a house when I was 21. If you want to earn money, you know, I should have, you know, played for my local rugby league team, and I should have had a girl and had my white picket. There's certain like regiments and a certain beer culture and a connection to the coal mining industry. There's all these life religious axioms that
you line up.
Yeah. And that's okay. There's beauty pockets in all of those things, but I think as well, like my friend Kyle Leinhart, who you're a big fan of his music, like we had this chat the other day. He's come from atheism, I've come from Adventism, and he's like, dude, there's so much that I miss out on that you have and that you had and you have to this day that I'm still only just starting to understand in myself. Like Sabbath ritual, like I still believe in Sabbath rest, and it's beautiful because like right now, we're not thinking about getting to the office. Most of us that are, you know, you and I, Conrad, particularly, like, for me at least, I've kept that liturgy of like, I'd like to space out my Saturdays as a day for creation and a day for prayer, meditation, and special connection with my humans. You know,
that came from your tradition.
And there's so much in the sacred text of the Bible that I was a big memorizer, and I could memorize like some chapters of the Bible. And so there's so many things that I take from that. I think, you know, my Christianity brought people together. Although it was a tribal way, like I've never sensed such a sense of connection as to things like Big Camp and witnessing a person's baptism. That to me, like we leave church, right? If we leave church, we also leave so much ritual. We don't have that rite of passage. And we don't have eldership, we lose it. Unless we're connected to First Nations people, like we lose that. And once you lose ritual, like how do you find those patterns? So yeah, man, like I'm all about it. I'm all about faith.
Interesting. I think, you know, we could do a whole nother episode on like the valuable things that you are describing now that you still hold on to, that you were handed within it.
Yeah.
And I keep coming back to that idea I keep seeing within. It sounds like the thing you struggled with most was the how you held those beliefs with you when you held them with a tight fist, finding belonging in being perfect and finding belonging in the right way. You felt a sense of, I guess, a sense of peace in having having certainty, but then you also found a lot of judgment and a lot of anxiety in doing the right thing, in adhering to this very specific way. But you've still, I guess you're in a completely different theological space. It sounds like it definitely doesn't sound very fundamental at all. But I'm also still hearing some influence of where you've come from and some acceptance, and now you're finding and noticing the beauty of what you were handed and almost adding to it in a way.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, man. It's like, you know, for myself and for my partner, like Chrissy, she came from a lot of like Pentecostal trauma, like speaking in tongues for 4 hours when she was 8, trying to resurrect her dead cat because her mum said that they could like pray to bring their cat back to life or whatever. And it's just kind of like we've both come with these things, and it has impacted our relationship. Like certain like, oh, but we've got to know the truth and, and like all this certainty
Right.
stuff. But the more that we've come to reflect on our past and our deconstruction is like, the biggest thing is like, how can we hold our theology kind of lightly? Like, it sounds so contradictory to the programmed Christian because, but this is the truth and the truth sets me free and the way to heaven is narrow. Jesus is it's just kind of like, and they're great. Hold them. But also, in your other hand, just keep it open and just be like an open mind, a soft heart, holding those beautiful gems lightly, playing with them, dancing with them. Like,
So it's not so much that the ideas that you had were wrong in any empirical sense. It's just that the way that you believed them, you didn't find much value in.
Yeah.
Is that
find much
accurate?
peace and much freedom in it, which ultimately pushed you out of it.
I don't know if Jesus ever thought that there was going to be like this giant, organized, massive $1 billion franchise of a religion behind his legacy. Like, I don't think he thought that was going to be the thing. Like, I think that Jesus was more about the here and now and and this earth and this home, and was very into consciousness. Jesus says, why do you think of tomorrow? Why do you keep your head in tomorrow? Like, look at the birds, look at the sparrows. They're so present. Jesus would make these connections to nature. And I think it's like, once you can come to the Bible with new eyes, once you can kind of just hold, your traditions and your axioms and your creeds lightly, it's kind of like you become more open to, wow, I can listen to someone. I'm not trying to be this missionary and there's someone I'm trying to save. It's like you come on this equal, egalitarian playing field. You come as a family. You're talking like conscience to conscience, not ego to ego. It's soul to soul.
So what I'm hearing is that you're not actually, you're not trying to convert anyone in inverted commas. You're like, because you were talking about before as well, where you were learning so many different things from other teachers and stuff, and it sort of became a thing where you're now at a point where you can learn from and speak to people where they're at without any sort of pretense coming into it.
Oh, it's so good. Like Chrissy's family, for example. My partner's family is very conservative, evangelical, West Coast, kind of white privilege American. And, they've kind of liked the Billy vibe. Sometimes they don't. But I come from a place of grace because I'm like, it's not my job to try and convince them about myself. And they've also come from a certain heritage with certain values and certain trauma. And you just kind of come from that place of like, there isn't one certainty of why there's disconnect or connection, but like all I can be is love, and I think when it comes to your fellow man and, like the way I connect with people now, like I feel like I can connect with someone's heartbeat on a whole different level because I'm present with their discovery and I'm trusting their own sovereignty and their own agency to navigate the divine. And it's beautiful, and I'm not trying to convince them of mine because I think that is elitist, and I think that's a colonial way to go about it. Is like, fuck, I'm going to come here from Holland, I'm going to go to Indonesia, and we're going to work out a trade deal, and you better believe in Jesus, or we're going to kill you.
And make them like us. Is that what you mean by colonialism? Like, we're going to come and you're going to be like us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the amount of times, for example, like I wanted to talk about purity because it's crazy for me to think about now, but the purity gospel, how much I would judge someone if I knew that they looked at porn, or like if they had slept with their partner, like immediate putting someone on the spectrum. And I was so programmed, like I said, like I didn't look at porn or masturbate for like 6 years, and I'm talking in my 20s, like the height. Yeah. I had like semen coming out of my ears. Like
there's a picture for you.
I was like attractive person
you'll find that on a website.
In skinny jeans.
Look it up.
Like, what's happening to my body?
We might actually change the clickbait for this one. Semen coming out of my ears.
That'll get
the thing is, it's just bizarre that like, again, it's one of those doctrines that I really held on to so much that brought a lot of, again, judgment on myself. I feel like when we judge others, it's only an overflow of the judgment that we have for ourselves. And so if I thought about boobs, oh my goodness. And I'd go through this flagellant thing where I was almost like whipping my back like a Franciscan monk, you know, just like, it's just like this guilt feedback loop. Like, man, like I feel like that's again, like how much that corrupted my sense of bodily beauty and the way that I saw myself. Like I feel like now, like the other day I was swimming in the ocean, I was diving with some boys off this reef in Sydney. I just held my body and I was just hugging my body and I almost just said sorry to my body for how many terrible things I've said to it. I just held it. I was just like, man, like I love being me and sexuality is an energy. Like I'm not even saying like I'm very careful about interactions with people and like I haven't been on a crazy sexual journey, but I'm just saying as an example, the impact that fundamentalism had on the way that I saw my body and sensual energy. And the toll that took on my relationship and still the reprogramming of like, I've only seen
the purity culture that says your body is
kind of
evil.
destroyed so much of my freedom, you know?
That's definitely something we could definitely talk about and dive
whole nother
into.
chat.
I can as we wrap this up, it's been awesome to talk to you. You talk about yoga, meditation, you know, what people might call these new age ideas, but then you also might be triggering a lot of people because you're dropping Bible verses, talking about how you aspire to be like Jesus, very Christian things that Christians would get on board with. Now, I can hear people asking, and answer this how you want, but this question is in the universe, and some people may ask it to categorize and box to see if you're okay to listen to or not. But some people might just genuinely ask it to wonder how you sit and how you would describe your own journey. But answer it how you like. Are you a Christian then?
Yeah.
As much nuance as you like. You don't have to yes or no it like at the beginning.
Yeah.
I'd say like a Christian mystic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that label still is helpful for you for describing.
It still has value.
Oh, it's not really like
you see the
I
world.
honestly never say that. I would never like.
Okay.
You know, some people are like, some fans from Brazil, like, você é Adventista? And I'm like, sure. Like, if you want to play, am I a Newcastle Knights fan? Sure. Like, yeah. Like, I don't, it's, to me, it's still language. It's still that mammalian.
Yeah, you don't need the box, but if somebody wants to call you that, then you're okay with it sort of thing. Like, you don't need the label personally. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sure, like the immediacy when someone says, I'm actually, no, there's no one that comes up to you and says, hey, my name's Fred, I'm gay, and I do psychedelics once a month. So you know, it's kind of like you don't talk to people like that, you know, like except when it comes to religion, it's kind of like, but what are you? Yeah. It's kind of like, like I don't even like saying, I'm a surfer. It's kind of like, again, it's the ego trying to protect itself.
I do that all the time, Billy.
I know.
Is
It's a good card to drop because surfers are cool, like on a universal scale. But I'm like, I'm an ocean lover. I love the ocean. It's a doing thing for me. It's like it's a relationship. I'm part of the ocean. I think I am, you know, and so, and it's the same thing. Oh, but Billy's an eco warrior, and I'm like, really? But what is that? It's kind of like I love nature, like I protect nature. Again, people are trying to classify me in the environmental world, in the religious world, in the socio-political world. Like, what do you think of Trump? It's like, I don't know. He's probably an awesome human. Like, I don't know. Like, but on all these levels, I don't know if it's part of like the reptilian brain that's in this like this fight or flight kind of thing. It's trying to like figure out what it can connect with and who it can trust. And for me, like I would just rather like I'm Billy and like I'm a human and I love doing art and I love people and I love protecting Mother Nature. Like it's great. And I think it's just kind of like for me, like I can have so many more conversations with people. It's not even a shame thing because people are like, oh, Billy's just ashamed. He doesn't want to say he's Christian. I'm like, yeah, but like say that you're a Christian in certain parts of the world where they've had the Crusades and people can recount their ancestors that were slaughtered by thousands of Christian troops. It's like language can be painful. It's like, it's like, it can be so triggering for some people.
Whereas this language of where you say like, Christian mystic, I might go by that. Where is that language then helpful for you?
Just because I've come from the Christian tradition and it's a beautiful celebration and acknowledgement of my heritage, the legacy that's been passed down to me. Like, I think it's great. A lot of my world has come from that world. I don't go to the mosque if I'm going to go for an experience. Like I'll go to yoga or go to a church, you know? So I'm well versed in the Bible.
Culture.
But I'm a mystic in the sense that I'm connected to the Franciscan monks and to I'll go to like the Sufis, and I'm connected to Aboriginal spirituality because I'm a mystic. A mystic can see beyond the walls of fundamentalism and see the connection of all things and the connection to country and the transcendence of the divine and the divine in all and in you all. Like it's beautiful. So for me, I feel like that becomes a bit of a safe card to like, yes, I'm part of this human and this transhuman experience of connecting to the divine, and call it essence, call it isness, call it God. I'm part of that cycle and that circle. It's not one line. I think it's circles, and I think it's a beautiful thing. And there's unknown, there's known. But all I can know is that I'm a curvature of consciousness. I'm just part of this thing for a time, and that's beautiful enough for me.
It sounds like you used to once upon a time use language to categorize who was in, who was out, and who is right and who is wrong. And it sounds much more you use language a lot more metaphorically and descriptively now to try and communicate
and form connection as opposed
form
to
connections
division.
and describe certain things rather than use it to draw lines in the sand of who's in and who's out.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah.
And like some of you might see me in church in a week's time, and I'll be there, I'll be loving ya, and I'll close my eyes, I'll be on the scripture, beautiful, and I'll be completely present. And that's why I think it's so powerful. If you can come back to liturgy, it's not so much about, well, do you still believe what we believe? It's like, no, but I'm still here to like break bread with you and experience communion with you. And that is the combining thing, is we're coming back to this picture of Jesus, this picture of sacrifice, you know, breaking from that one loaf, drinking that fake wine and having that symbolic ceremony of like, yeah, we're all in this together and it's beautiful. Forgive your brother. Fuck yeah.
So these things have become more like the same things seem to have become more meaningful for you, but in a completely different way.
Yeah. And I think that's the reason why I can still connect with most people in my family. It's like, and we're not worried about each other. It's like we come back on these terms and we come back to the sacred table and we still pray together. Yeah. But there still is that room to move. It's not this or that. It's both and. And it's not like you just suddenly open your mind up to everything and everything. Like that's also dangerous too. It's like it's growing into that inner voice and finding what works. And yeah, so... And I think it really combats a lot of that draconian kind of culture that I grew up with in my home, where my dad literally taking books out of my mum's bag that he didn't believe that were good for her mind and for her theology. Like literally, like I've come from a home where there's such a stigma around curiosity, but I think that is, if you're gonna like mute someone's curiosity, you kill their humanity. Guys, the most important thing that I'd love you to take away, if you hate me, that's all right. If you love what's been said, that's okay as well. But I'm all about presence. Write it down on your hand. If you've got a biro, just be like presence. I feel like that is a word that's going to unlock a lot of, vestiges, analyzing things from your past because like there's certain belief systems that are going to take away from this moment. But I think Jesus was all about the now, and the powerful thing about breath work and meditation and even prayer is that it unlocks a part of your brain where you are about this. It's not about that. It's about this. It's not about yesterday. It's not about tomorrow. It's about this moment. Where are you? When people say what time it is, just say to them, here. And when people say, where are you? Just say, this moment. Like this moment and here is everything. And I think that just unlocks so much awareness and joy and ground of being. So, yeah, heaps of love.
If you get to the end of this and you're wondering, like, oh, do I agree or I disagree? Well, we're doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's not really the point.
Hopefully, we've been able to outline how Billy sees the world, his journey, where he's come from, where he is now. If you have any questions that you'd like to send through to Billy, he's just on Instagram. Billy, you've got music on Spotify, Instagram. How do people check out what you're doing and what you're up to?
Yeah, guys, I'm also starting a podcast that's going to be way better than yours.
Oh, damn it.
It's called The Beginning of Us, and it's launching in a couple of weeks. I've got a new album coming out later this year. Lots of YouTube stuff as well. Like, we're not doing shows at the moment, so otherwise I'd talk to you about tours and stuff I'm doing. They're probably going to be cancelled anyway because of COVID.
Okay.
Definitely write to me over Instagram or check out my website,
Okay.
billyottolive.com. And there's heaps of content and ways to interact with my craft. Yeah, if you want me to produce your music,
cool.
Just hit me up and we'll work on some beats.
If you have any questions or anyone you think we should talk to or topic ideas, we want to follow the rabbit holes that you send us down. Yeah. So send us an email at ideasdigest@gmail.com. That's right, it's at Gmail. No one can afford a proper URL here. And if you can always reach out to us on Instagram. We've got some interactive things during the week where we find out what you guys are thinking and where we want to go next. So thanks for listening to the show, and we'll catch everyone in the next episode.